It's a Saab, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Welcome back to the Sonett Rally Prep episode part 2. I hope you enjoyed part 1, and in this episode we're going to finish the car, get it on the road, and have some fun. I do suppose it is time to work on the wheel bearing on the front here. Now this is the one that I think is squeaking, or was squeaking, so we want to get this off for sure. I guess that'll go like this. Now the hub is off. Let's pull the dust shield and we will get to removing this whole thing. Next step is we got to take off the bolts down here and bolts back behind here. It's all loosened up. I've got my lower ball joint bolts out so this can move, and I'm going to pull the hub off of spindle here. I should say I didn't do this on the other side, and I probably should have. On the other side I stacked up washers in here to bring that knuckle away from the axle, and then I put the castle nut back on and tapped on it to push it back through. It worked, but it kind of bent the castle nut a little bit. Not an ideal solution, so if you can get a puller, go get a puller. All right, she's in, or she's out, or something like that. Cool. This is kind of a weird design in a couple ways, but one of the nice things is that you don't have to push any ball joints out of the knuckle itself. They just slide right out of the chassis, not a big deal. But we do have this giant nut to deal with, and that nut retains the wheel bearing inside the knuckle. And inside the nut, or on the outside of the nut I should say, is the big outer wheel seal. We also have the inner seal here that we're going to pull off as well, check that fitment, and then we can start tackling that nut. Oh, jeez. There it comes. Oh, man. That's a tough one to pull. Currently tipping the entire table. And we bent the seal puller again, so see if I can get that. Okay, there we go. Oh man, that was tough.
How rusty there.
All right, that one's got some caramel inside. On inspection here, the seals are not that bad. I think they were not leaking or anything, but they definitely are full of some pretty nasty grease. Let's try to get the actual bearing out of here. So what we have to do here is persuade this whole nut off, and it is a large nut. We got a little piece that you knock down to keep it from turning, so we want to flatten that back out, and then we can put this thing in a larger vise and turn this thing. Now the other one on this car was super tight, way tighter than it should have been, so I'm hoping this one is not that way, but I'm bracing for the worst. Keep it going, keep going. Oh, fuck. Oh. Ready? I think she's pretty hot. Okay. Holy shit. This is absurd. This is actually more difficult right now than the passenger side one. So I wish there was like some kind of tool that you could put on here with the slot in there and really torque on it, or I don't know, maybe they could have had a large hex that you could put a giant wrench on, kind of like a a big truck axle, but that's not the world we live in, so we're gonna do our best. So we squared these things up a little bit. Ready? To recording. Yeah! Whoo! That. Holy. What is it? 3 feet and probably 100 pounds each.
A torque?
Or 100 pounds total, so probably 300 pounds of torque. Holy crap. It does look like the oil got into the threads, so that's good to know. On the bottom there, that's pretty clean actually, so pull that out. Ooh, buddy. Nasty. Oh, that came out easy. Yikes. Pretty grimy. I got still more of that gritty nastiness in there. All right, so we have our outer seal here, and you can see it says 50, 70, 10/8. We got a new seal from Ashcraft. His number is 4222, and it also says 50, 70, 10. They are the same size. What's the inner one look like? 42, 65, 10. That's what it says in the old one as well. I know that Ashcraft charges a higher price for these, but he does also include detailed instructions on the whole thing. And we will actually be using these in this process because there's some stuff in here that is a little bit tricky if you don't know the tricks. All right, we've got our bearing, hub, nut, and seal. We've got stuff cleaned up. Looks like the outer, or the inner thread, I should say, on the nut got a little messed up. Some shavings coming off, so I'll have to clean that up a little bit. The bearing is rolling a little bit. It's a little looser than the passenger side, but I don't feel any play. Like, it just rolls better, so not going to worry about that. These are between $50 and $85 to buy new, plus shipping, so I want to reuse that as much as I can. And we got the hub all cleaned out as well. So we'll go pack this one up, and I'm going to pack from one side down through both layers to make sure that that grease is coming out the back side. Extra important with 2 layers of balls. And of course we have our seals over here ready to go. So let's get her in. There we go. Let me get the threads on here cleaned up a little bit. I'm just going to throw it in. I put a little bit of anti-seize on here just because it was so difficult to get off that I don't think it's gonna have any issue staying in place. According to Ashcraft, you know, tighten that up and snug it with your hands, and then you can take this and give it a medium whack. All right, 2-pound sledge. I think that's a medium whack. Bent down. There's a substantial void between the bearing and the seal, so I'm going to pack the seal here, and then once that goes in, I'll pack the void between them. There's a ridge just above the seal, so as long as you can see the ridge above the seal all the way around, it should be good to go. I know I said the nut was way too tight on this one, and here's a visual. You can see the place where it was lined up. That used to be over here, so that was way over tightened, and that was why it was so difficult to get off. So make sure you don't go all cowabunga on this thing. It really doesn't need 300 foot-pounds to go on. It just needs to have a good couple whacks and it'll be fine. Don't be worried about this gap in between the seal and the bearing. That is designed in, and if you look at the cross section in the manual, that's still there. You're not doing anything wrong. We get the old seals out, the bearing out, bearing cleaned, re-greased, back in, 2 new seals in. It's time to throw the whole knuckle back in the car. I've got this thing just barely sitting here so it doesn't fall on me. And I want to show you that the trick that Ashcraft has put in his very helpful information is to take a 1.5 inch inner diameter pipe, and it's just a plumbing pipe that was broken. So I cut it into 1 inch long, 1.5 inch long, and 2 inch long. So you take these in stages, and we're going to slide one in. I want to make sure the smooth part is going in. We're going to throw our castle nut and washer on top of that, and then we're going to gently, on the lowest setting, run this in. Want to check it to make sure that we're not going up against the end of the threads, and we're still good. I'm going to take that spacer out and go to the next spacer, which is the 1.5 inch long. When we go through all 3 spacers up to the 2 inch one, we will find that the knuckle will seat itself on the stub axle, and we will be good to go. Alrighty, we can see that we are very close to the CV boot right now. We got the castle nut run up to one of the holes for the cotter pins. Now this is ready to reassemble everything. Have to make sure that my lower ball joint bolts are all the way in. We got the bolts back up in that, I don't know what you call this, cross member tie rod bracket deal. Instead of that pesky tab thing, which really, it works fine for doing it 1 or 2 times, but once you get maintaining the car and doing more work to it, it gets really annoying. So I threw some external star washers on. Yeah, we'll get those tightened up and catch back later. Feels great to get the bearings done on this thing so I can cross that off the list. And, you know, I know you can get stuff really cheap online, but I like to support guys like Mark Ashcraft because, you know, out of all the places full of crap, you can just email him and he will send you the correct parts with information on installing them. And I think that's worth a lot. Time to work on the exhaust. I would love to take the exhaust off the car and work on it on the bench, but that's not a possibility. You can see why in the Sonett post-trip service episode with the mouse cameo. But I'm going to have to go under the trunk here and see that angle of the exhaust kind of goes up like this. Under the trunk, I want to slice at the bottom, jack the exhaust up a little bit, flatten that angle out, and then re-weld it. So let's get going on that. Well, there's the good side of the weld. I just kind of layered tacks, and I think it went okay, except for the couple holes I blew on the other side.
We're trying to get the dash lights working on the 3 gauges here. I guess the instrument lights, technically. Pulled all the gauges out, put new bulbs, a 286 bulb in the back. We still didn't have instrument lights. We think we have a bad rheostat here. And then when we pull these 2 together, we have dash lights. Now we just need to hook up the new grease speedo cable and put this thing back in.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Got the carburetor apart here, and there's a little bit of fuel sediment in the left side here along the edge. So apparently after restoring the tank and all that, apparently we're still getting fuel sediment. There's one vent tube on the very top of the tank that didn't get cleared out apparently in the restoration process, and I just want to keep an eye on that. I'm not sure that's putting sediment in the fuel because it's such a small portion. It could be, but I don't think I'm going to do anything right now about that. We do have a small fuel leak to check out down at the fuel pump, so we're going to pull that off too while the fuel system is being worked on.
Maybe we'll find something in the fuel pump that's got some sediment.
Fuel pipe might have sediment in it.
Yeah.
New patient on the operating table is the Burton Power fuel pump. So we're gonna check this out. There's been leaking. There's been fuel leaking around here. I think it goes like this with an inlet and outlet. So we're gonna see first if maybe the screws aren't quite tight. Yeah, that wasn't tight at all. These actually a little bit loose. Wonder if that's enough to do it. And I'm seeing wetness around the whole thing.
Yep.
There's fuel all around that side, but this side is dry. So we'll wipe it off and we'll reassemble it. Is this the time to get worried? I have about a week until we need to drive this thing 400 miles in easily sub-freezing weather. It looks like it's going to be around 10 degrees, 10 to 15 degrees next weekend. And we have a carburetor I just rebuilt. I don't know if the float's set right. We have no blower motor. The windshield washer system is not there. Untested fuel pump repairs. We have driving lights that I have not seen shine yet. The front end is off the car, and generally I'm just kind of nervous. This is getting worrying. We're gonna keep going, but I've been able to knock some stuff off the list. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
What are you doing right now?
I'm building a bracket for the new heater motor.
Yeah? How's it going?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Very good.
Hey, what's that in your hand?
It's a new heater fan motor, blower motor.
You want to hook that thing up and we'll show the audience?
Nah. So we have some crusty electrical parts here that don't work, and we're trying to clean them up here. So we took some salt and vinegar and mixed it up and put the parts in here and letting them soak. And then when we're done, we're going to move over and put them in a bath of water and baking soda to neutralize the acid.
All right, we got the dimmer switch soaked in, what was it, vinegar and salt, I believe. That's back in. There was a piece of metal that kind of lays here and it was contacting, so be careful about putting that back in. Anyway, so we're gonna turn this on, turn the lights off, so we can see as we turn this on, down, up, down, yay! Today's a big day. We're going to get the car off the stands, flush the coolant, and go wash it down. And once it's washed down, bring it back in, let it dry off, and probably tomorrow we're gonna oil coat this thing. Going to try to start the car up. It only has water in the coolant right now, no antifreeze, so I got to make sure it's running when it's out here. Got the points hooked back up after doing a lot of electrical testing, and I think it has a little bit of fuel. What's going on here? Got a tiny bit of fuel in the fuel filter. Gonna have to fill her up. Dad's out clearing snow at the undercoating booth. We're gonna throw some fuel in this thing. I don't know. Hopefully that's it. Yeah, it didn't work. There's no fuel in the filter. So we poured gas into it, poured starting fluid in. It'll run on starting fluid, but it's not pulling gas, pulling fuel. I realized I put the fuel pump gasket on sideways, so it's not actually in there. It might be preventing the fuel pump from working. There might be another problem. I'm hoping that I installed it or reinstalled it correctly, but should be no reason it doesn't work. So let's put that gasket on right. We get the fuel pump hooked up to the inlet line, and it's not on the car yet. Do you want to pump this for me with your fingers, and we'll get the sound it's making? So we know that we get fuel up the fuel hose, right up to where the pump is. We know that the pump pulls fuel in the bottom and out the top. We hook them together. There's fuel coming in the bottom. You pump it, the fuel should come out the top. How can we bench test the fuel pump and it does the right thing, and then we put it on the car and it does the wrong thing? I don't get it. I installed it upside down. Tested correctly because I tested it correctly and then installed it upside down. Turns out that pumping air into your fuel tank doesn't make your car run. So we're gonna roll this thing back out and try to start it again. I think it'll start this time. Leave it off, leave it off. Well, it works. Decided to throw a thing on the coolant bleeder up by the heater, and it's coming up really nasty. So we're glad we're doing that before the radiator flush, which is idling here. Got the coolant flush in the system, so I guess we're gonna wash it with the coolant flush, and that'll take half an hour. Here's a good way to see the two lines that we ran together, those two fuel lines. There's the overflow here and the feed here and the overflow here. And those run out there. That's the overflow line. Try not to get my hand in the fan. This thing's looking a lot neater, and I'm happy about that. And then we have the overflow here for the coolant, and that goes out the side in this hole. I don't know what that hole's supposed to be for, but maybe. So we're gonna run this thing up to the plank and get it washed off. Overall, I think the wash went pretty well, but there's one surprise I want to show you. If we look at the passenger side rocker, we got a little split here and a hole here, and that's maybe an inch long, maybe an inch and a half. So it's something that I'm gonna have to take care of it at some point. And well, the other side's got a split along. The rockers may have been replaced at some point, but apparently not very well. Might have to throw some seam sealer in there before we go on this rally. Throw a little patch over this so it doesn't get extra salt and stuff inside. Aside from that, I'm pretty pleased with it, and I think the car has given us no other surprises as far as rust and condition under there. In this episode, the Saab returns to its roots as an airplane. Just kidding. Now we got this thing off from the power washing, and unfortunately there's still a lot of dirt on there, but I don't think the dirt's fully gonna come off until I restore the chassis and get it down to bare metal and paint it up again. It's just that rubber undercoating really hangs on to the dirt. So I've got two products here that I'm going to use, and I'm going to start off with the CRC Heavy Duty Corrosion Inhibitor. I was trying to use ACF 50 or Corrosion X, but they all seem to be pretty good products. I'm going to take this around and spray it on all the bolts, and that'll hopefully protect the bolts extra well. And then over everything, I'm going to spray New Hampshire oil undercoating, and this is basically just an oil that you spray on stuff. So that'll give us a nice barrier, against the salt and the weather. Hoping that this works well for me, and let's get going. It's been a couple hours and the garage is still kind of stinky, But this stuff seems like it's cured pretty well. Anyway, it's that's the first coat to do the bolts, and we will throw some New Hampshire oil in now. It's a non-toxic undercoating. And what are we doing with it? The spray gun's kind of tricky, right?
Yeah, so what I discovered is if you force air into the vent hole,
okay, I see it.
It pressurizes everything and shoots it out, and then once it pressurizes it, then it should go.
Okay. Well, there we go. That only took like 2 hours of...
And you gotta adjust this nozzle too.
Oh, that one adjusts? I thought that was supposed to be tight.
I thought so too, but when you tighten it down, it doesn't work.
Goofy. All right. Well, we'll get going on the car then. Well, it's kind of dusty in here. The car looks like a duck in a dawn commercial, but I think that'll protect it pretty well. I got all up in the rear axle and everything. I noticed that this needs a little adjustment. So, yep, we got underneath as well. So the whole bottom of the car is nice and oily, and it's supposed to move around a little bit too. So I'm sure there are little tiny pieces that didn't get hit, but that's okay. It'll move around, and we got a little bit in the engine bay as well, especially that corner. That corner was really rusty. And then just above, it says it's okay for electronics, so I'm not too worried about that. Sweet! I'm excited to get this thing put back together. The eagle-eared among you will have noticed that I have a slight miss in the car still. My theory is that when I went up to the UP and the points closed up, that it was misfiring so bad that it probably fouled all the spark plugs at that point, and it did continue to miss slightly on the way home. I thought it was a carburetor issue with the sediment in it. Could have been partly that, but since I've rebuilt the carb, it still misses. Number 1 actually looks pretty dark and city. 2 is dark and city. 3 is dark city and smells like gas. And 4 is dark and city. So I'm gonna consider them issues. We'll replace them all. Time to put the clamshell back on, hopefully for the last time until the rally. Got those lights on, man, did they look cool. And then Dad's going in, hooking the wiring up. We had the headlight stuff on schedule for tomorrow, so it's Monday right now, and the rally's on Saturday. So I think that we might be a little bit ahead of schedule, which is probably good, because there's probably going to be something going wrong.
It's a Saab, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
We've uncovered a potential issue. And they're a little bit wobbly. The whole bracket wobbles, so I should have some stabilizers up here. But we'll see how they go. I don't have time for stabilizers yet.
Yep.
Hell yeah! Sweet. The driving lights work. We'll have to go out and aim them, and I also have to replace the seal beams. I got some nice new ones from Napa. Cool. Let's go to bed. Well, we went in to replace the seal beams here. Turns out the seal beam was not bad. It was the fuse. But I went in here and did all the corrosion inhibitor inside all this hardware. And now we can see that the light works on low, go to the high beams, and they all work. So we should have, even if these bounce and that bounces, hopefully we at least have one light on the road. What we also have over here is some recovery gear, and I got this there. This is on clearance at work. It's a 20-foot kinetic rope, so that is kind of like a tow rope that stretches so you can get a little momentum and pull a car out easily. And then I got these off Jeff's Jungle website, and we got just a couple really cheap soft shackles to go with it. And then you just take that around and you push that through. In case we were to go off the road, we could use this to get out, and hopefully any passerby could get up to their truck or whatever. Yeah, we're gonna keep going on this. We gotta fill up the coolant. We're going to drop it on the ground, take it outside, and aim the driving lights. And we're gonna drop a bunch of screws inside the clamshell while we're at it, instead of installing the bezel like we should, right?
Yeah, you want to hold this for me?
Okay. We got the headlights aimed a little bit, so we kind of roughly aimed them against the garage door, but we want to make sure that they're gonna work on the road. So the test drive went pretty well overall. I think the driving lights were the biggest concern for me, to make sure that they were not going to bounce all over, and we're driving on gravel roads with snowpack on them.
The heater seems to work fine, although
Dash vents are still blowing cold.
yeah, so I think we're gonna, I mean, it wasn't blowing 8-degree air, but probably 40-degree air. It was
40,
pretty
50,
cold.
yeah.
So we'll plug those off, and then we have good defrost and good heat below. Other than that, everything's coming together. All the dash lights work, and we can see inside. And
we only really have a few things left to do. I'm gonna check all the fluids, then we're going to pack some spares and tools, pack some survival gear like blankets, coats, gloves, stuff like that. Probably do some Rain-X on the windshield, and we'll wax the car. My dad is working on mounting the Rabbit Rally, or the Rabbit Glow box for the timekeeping. We'll see if we figure that out. And then I gotta rust proof the driving lights inside and mount a GoPro on the roll bar. And I think that's about where we're at. What do you think?
sounds good to me.
Yeah, once we get all this stuff done, we're gonna go do a practice rally in Hudson tomorrow. We did a practice rally last fall to learn how to use Rabbit. So we're going to try to run it again in the Sonett, make sure that everything's working correctly. We don't have any surprises down in Winona. It says we're 47 minutes off. Something is wrong. It's
0.74. We are turning right on 970 spur.
Okay, thank you.
970.
I think this GPS needs to be calibrated. I don't think it calibrated itself. Got lights again. Really high effort to shift that thing. Holy shit. Well, I don't know what that means.
I can't
get on
calibrate.
it. Pretty far off. We pretty much maxed that entire stage. Why is it not shift now?
Yep, 970. Gas 42. 0.89 narrow bridge sign. We're going straight through. Right here.
Yep, and 0. How long did we drive?
3 hours.
3 hours. The current temperature is,
6 below Fahrenheit.
and the car performed actually relatively well.
Yeah.
We had some issues setting up the Rabbit Rally app again because it's not really intuitive. It's a nice app to use once you're going, but I'll have to do a separate little segment on that. The biggest issues we ran into are that the heater worked really well when we left. And what temp was it when we left? Like 10?
No, it's about 3 degrees
3?
Fahrenheit.
Okay. So it did get colder over the night. Not really sure what's up. Maybe the heater just doesn't work at 8 below 0. sometimes the transmission just does not want to shift when it's cold or when it's grumpy. Basically, first to second and third to fourth were, I mean, it felt like I was picking up a 30-pound weight, pulling it back, and actually my shoulder's really sore. So I'm hoping that that's not as much of an issue on Saturday. I know it's supposed to be about 30 degrees warmer. The lights are all aimed directly into oncoming traffic. Otherwise, the lights are giving a lot of good light on the roads. Yeah, I think we got a small list of stuff to take care of tomorrow. And tonight's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. We're gonna take care of some stuff, and then Saturday is the rally. And we'll have a separate video on running the rally, so you get to come along with us. I set up a GoPro in the car, so you can hopefully watch us bicker the whole time. Got the girl wiped down and waxed, but came out a little bit greasy. I think maybe the undercoating may have sprayed some stuff, but overall she's looking shinier, so that's good. My stupid magenta fender is, well, I got what I wanted out of the fender, right? It's not primer, so I'll have to get a paint match later, but she's a little bit shined up, ready to go out and show off tomorrow. Well, I think that's it. The car is idling unhappily in the cold. It's about 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and we are headed down to Winona for this rally. What do you think?
I'm hoping it's going to be a warmer ride than our test drive the other night.
I think it already is by about 8 degrees. So catch us in 2 weeks for the actual recap on the rally. I'm going to have some in-car footage and hopefully some drive-bys. Press on.
Well, there's a cute left.
Yeah, that's almost
Is that our turn